Hello Americans channel. This video is made by free videos from Storyblocks, and these images and video we use just for explanation, and it's free use also.
Every week a girl throws a cupcake in trash until her father decides to follow her and find out why. Every Friday morning, Mia waits on the porch, clutching a muffin wrapped in paper towels with her tiny hands. Her blonde hair swings as she jumps up and down excitedly, listening for the roar of the garbage truck. When it finally appears, she beams as if it's Christmas morning. The driver, Tom, gets out of the truck as calm as ever and accepts the treat with a slight nod. I always thought it was a nice routine between the two of them. But today, as I watched them more closely, I noticed something. His eyes seemed duller, his movements slower, and a strange feeling inside me made me go after him. This Friday morning passes like any other. My daughter, muffin in hand, waits anxiously, and her excitement is evident in her every gesture. As soon as the garbage truck comes around the corner, she starts jumping for joy and can't contain her excitement. Her joy is so infectious that I smile without even realizing it as I watch her. She seems to have a very special connection with the truck, almost as if its arrival has a touch of magic. "Mr. Tim," calls Lily excitedly, her voice as clear and cheerful as a bell. Tim, the bin man, answers her with his usual warm smile and leans forward just enough to take Lily's small hands in his, offering him a gift of ice cream. There is an unmistakable tenderness in this exchange, an unspoken ritual that is repeated every Friday with the same sweetness. But today something is different, and I begin to sense the subtle differences in this everyday moment. As Tim puts the muffin in his pocket, I watch his eyes. Sometimes they sparkle like he's about to cry, even though he tries to hide it behind his gloves. I used to think it was because Lily was a bright spot in his day, like a ray of sunshine. But now I wonder if there's more to it than that. Tim has a special nickname for Lily, Sunshine? The name does her credit, and every time he calls her that, she responds with a beaming smile. Their encounters are fleeting, characterized by donuts, smiles, and small words of gratitude. Even if these encounters are brief, they leave a feeling of warmth that lingers long after the truck has gone. Their relationship seems simple, almost trivial, but there is something about these brief moments that awakens a deeper curiosity in me that I find hard to ignore. After observing this exchange for several Fridays, curiosity got the better of me one day. "Why do you give him muffins every week?" I asked Lily. Without hesitation, she looked at me with her wise eyes and replied, "Because he looks hungry, Mommy." Her words stuck in my mind and resonated with unexpected power. I couldn't stop thinking about the weight of his words. What if there's more to it than meets the eye? Although his words were simple, they reverberated in my head like a constant echo. Curiosity tugged at me, gently but steadily, and I couldn't ignore it. Today, after Tim left, I decided to find out what lay beyond our driveway. I felt it was time to follow him to find out what was bothering him and why my daughter's muffins seemed to have such a special meaning for him. I kept a safe distance as the garbage truck made its usual route. My eyes didn't wander away from Tim, who was carefully stowing Lily's muffin in his coat pocket. My heart pounded with an uncomfortable mixture of curiosity and worry. I didn't want him to spot me, so I kept hidden in the shadows, trying as best I could to remain unnoticed as I cautiously followed him. Every stop of the truck brought me one step closer to the heart of a secret I was determined to uncover. Tim worked in silence, making each house a short stop in his routine. He seemed to be caught up in his thoughts, navigating an ocean of endless tasks. The hours passed slowly as I watched him from a distance, trying to glean every little clue Lily had unwittingly revealed. He proceeded methodically, albeit marked by fatigue, always with his head down and almost without saying a word. After what felt like an eternity, Tim entered an alleyway and managed to get away from the truck. My heart pounded as I stayed hidden, torn between fear and curiosity, trying to decipher what seemed like a hidden world. Lily's words echoed in my head, filling me with the urge and determination to get closer to the truth. He looked around carefully, as if to make sure no one was following him, before disappearing behind an old building. The truck had disappeared and was swallowed up by the silence that filled the alley. The wind rustled through the leaves and the sound of my own heartbeat echoed in my ears. I wanted to observe more of what Tim was doing, but without giving away my presence in the shadows. There was something mysterious about this quiet scene, as if it was laden with hidden secrets. I crept forward quietly, weaving my way between the houses until I found shelter behind a wooden fence. I held my breath and peered through a gap in the fence. There sat Tim against a weathered brick wall. A palpable sadness enveloped him like a thick, dark cloud. This little cupcake seemed to be his only refuge, a moment of calm in the midst of chaos. I felt like I was entering something sacred, like I was witnessing a deeply intimate ritual. His shoulders sagged heavily, and with a slow gesture he reached into his pocket to pull out the cupcake Lily had given him. Tim didn't devour the muffin like a hungry person. It was as if the sweetness of this little cake could soften the rough edges of her world. Watching her savor this simple gift said so much more than any words could. I felt a knot in my heart as I looked at it. Instead, he savored every bite calmly and treated it like a treasure. My eyes filled with tears without me knowing exactly why. He never seemed to notice my presence, or if he did, he didn't let on. He went about his routine, driving through the neighborhood, unaware of my constant stares. From my perspective, he seemed to be deep in thought, sometimes with a hint of confusion, but he never stopped or looked back. The next Friday morning, I got into the habit of discreetly following Tim after his garbage collection tour. His routine never changed. The misery between the houses seemed to be his only refuge. In this little corner of the world, he found a glimmer of solace, far away from everything else. It was heartbreaking to see how someone could be content with so little and still seem content. After picking up the trash and accepting the muffin, Tim disappeared into the silence of the lonely alley. He never asked for anything else and never expected any further gestures of kindness. For him, this time was almost a sacred ritual, a respite from the daily chaos. Only when the sky turned a darker shade did he make his way to the place where the garbage truck would arrive, and only when everyone else was asleep did he return to finish his work. He seemed to live in the shadows all the time. Tim stayed hidden behind the old building until the sun set behind the horizon. The smile that lit up his face when he was with Lily gave way to a serious, thoughtful expression when he was alone. Père La Sabja, which he savored quietly, told him if it was the last moment of sweet happiness he could enjoy. He couldn't find that smile anywhere else. Over time she showed with Lily, I gave step by step, understood how much it brightened her day, and a solemn expression her heart when he was alone, that sweet little whim. This cupcake became a weekly ritual for this Tim, who savored it quietly, as if the cupcake was the last sweet treat he could enjoy. One morning, I decided to bring 2 cupcakes to make Tim's day a little brighter. "This one's for you too," I said with a smile, feeling a new connection. Tim's eyes lit up with surprise, but he carefully took his usual cupcake anyway and replied with a quiet thank you. His voice sounded warmer and full of pent-up emotion. As Lily handed me his usual sweet treat, I reached forward and offered him the second one. When the next Friday came, I noticed someone new in the garbage truck. Lily ran out excitedly with her muffin in hand, but the truck didn't stop like it did when Tim was behind the wheel. I wondered what had become of Tim and hoped he had found the comfort he so desperately needed. This man didn't have his usual friendly, familiar smile. Disappointment was written all over her face. Without Tim, everything felt different. I realized that the little moments we shared had a much greater meaning than I had imagined. Lily and I shared not only cupcakes with him, but also a deep bond forged out of understanding and kindness. As the truck drove away, my heart clung to the hope that wherever Tim would be, he would carry with him the memory of the light we tried to bring to his days. Today, Lily held her muffin tightly in her hand, eagerly awaiting the anticipated meeting with Mr. Tim. "Tim," with an indifferent gesture, the man shrugged his shoulders and replied dismissively, "He hasn't come today." Her eyes scanned the surroundings, looking hopefully for her friend. But the truck pulled up again, leaving behind the emptiness of a smile that never came. But when the truck stopped, she hurried to ask the new driver, "Where is Mr.?" Lily was confused by this answer. Lily stood there staring blankly at the frosting, not really touching it. She turned the cupcake slowly in her hands, and I had the strangest feeling that her inner light was slowly fading. But deep in my chest, I felt a stabbing pain. It hurt to see her so disappointed. When I noticed her shoulders slump, I tried to put on a brave smile to cheer her up. The next Friday came sooner than expected, although hopes were low this time. As if everything was happening in slow motion, her little hand lowered to lie motionless beside her body as the truck passed, and the warm thank you that made her so happy faded away. I could see her face change to reflect silent disappointment, and in that moment we shared the same feeling of emptiness at the absence of our friend. Once again, Lily waited patiently with her muffin by her side. The garbage truck arrived on time, but Tim still gave no sign of life. However, I was only told that he had left with no further details or explanation. No clue, no new information, just confirmation that he was no longer there. This lack of clarity increased my unease. Who could possibly know where he had gone or why? The mystery of Tim's disappearance left us in a state of anxiety. Determined, I picked up the phone and called the city cleaning service to get answers about Tim's absence. She sat her muffin on the curb and whispered, "Just in case he comes back." This small gesture of kindness, as simple as it was meaningful, reflected our belief that everything could go back to the way it was. This belief, so pure and persistent, managed to infect me and ignite a spark of hope in me. Trying to remain calm, I said with a forced smile to Lily, "Maybe he's sick," even though deep down I didn't believe it. The weeks passed slowly, each one characterized by the sweet anticipation of Lily with her little cupcake. Lily stormed into the room with excited eyes and boundless energy and tugged insistently at my hand. Her joy was so infectious that my feet started moving before my mind could process it. Together, we ran excitedly towards the long-awaited reunion, but one morning I was woken from my slumber by a surprise. "Mommy, he's back," she shouted, beaming with joy, and dragged me outside. Tim was in front of us, but not in the driver's seat as usual. His clothes, now thinner and more worn, told of a hard life. But there he was, with that familiar smile, warmer than the sun. Lily couldn't contain her joy and ran towards him, while I followed, a flood of questions running through my mind. This time he was on foot. He came towards us on foot, and there was something different about him. Tim sank to his knees and lost himself in Lily's tight embrace. This time she didn't answer with words, but handed him the cupcake with touching earnestness. Their reunion was as simple as the gesture, but as profound as the emotions that permeated the moment and left an indelible mark on his heart. His eyes glistened with held-back tears as a warm feeling flowed over his disheveled exterior. "I've missed you, sunshine," he murmured, his voice breaking slightly. This time I paid more attention to Tim. In that brief moment, however, something inside me changed. Suddenly, the difficulties he was facing began to make sense, and the burden he was carrying seemed to be lightened a little, if only a little, by Lily's thoughtful gifts. His hands, red, chapped, and trembling, carefully held the muffin Lily held out to him. After taking it, he didn't pause for long, but simply waved and continued on his way. As I watched him closely, I noticed the clue we had missed. Lily's simple gesture of offering him this little morsel was a ray of hope in his bleak world. Seeing his plight broke my heart, but it also awakened a deep determination in me. I wanted to do more for him and help him find a way to a more stable life. The little muffin he was holding wasn't just a sweet snack, it was often his only meal. Tim was a homeless man living on the margins of society, struggling to survive from day to day. With cautious steps, I began to follow Tim's trail as he made his way through the streets. He walked in silence, his hands in his coat pockets, as if the cold or his thoughts were enveloping him. Eventually, he came to a quiet corner by a wall that looked strangely familiar. This place seemed to be his sanctuary, a corner away from prying eyes and the endless hustle and bustle of the city. I always kept to the sidewalks at a safe distance, watching him without losing sight of him. I had seen him resting there before. I took a deep breath and approached him carefully so as not to startle him. He turned around immediately, his eyes wild, as if a ghost had spoken his name. Her face was a mixture of surprise and something harder to decipher. Fear perhaps, or worry. I felt a knot in my chest when I saw him in this state. "Tim," I called out softly, surprised by the nervous tremor in my voice. Before he could react, I quickly mumbled, "I'm sorry, I just wanted to talk." His shoulders relaxed slightly, and he averted his eyes, as if he was burdened by an embarrassment he would rather not reveal. Without needing words, his face told stories of struggle and exhaustion, hidden behind his eyes of quiet kindness. I only wished he would allow me to come closer to better understand what he was fighting against. He looked at me cautiously, his eyes reflecting a mixture of suspicion and reserve. For a moment there was silence between us, heavy but sincere. His words hung in the cold air, imbued with an intimate truth that only he knew. Without another word, I sat down next to him and allowed the silence to envelop us, to respect the boundaries of what he was willing to share. Then he said in a barely audible whisper, as if he were speaking more to himself than to the world, "I have no place. I didn't want you to know," he finally said, his voice barely trembling. Suddenly I understood he was shielding Lily from the hardness of her own reality. I nodded slowly, appreciating her efforts to maintain the innocence of a child, even as the world around her became unforgiving. His words struck my heart and filled it with a quiet weight, a sadness that didn't need to be spoken. In a low whisper, I replied, "In a way, yes." As I watched him, I realized how vulnerable he was, hidden behind a layer of apparent strength. Lily's simple kindness was his anchor, something he desperately clung to. It connected them in a deeper and more intense way than I could ever have imagined. Children sense what we miss. He lowered his head even further as silent tears fell onto his hands. "You feed me more than you think," he murmured with a faint smile that lit up his tired face. For him, the muffin was not just a simple snack. It embodied hope, friendship, and humanity, all wrapped up in a delicate glaze. His gesture, so humble and profound, left me heartbroken and deeply moved. I never thought something so simple could mean so much. The muffin remained untouched in his hands. He held it with care as if it were a little treasure. That afternoon, I was in the kitchen baking another batch of cupcakes. When they had cooled, I wrapped them carefully in foil, one by one. The next morning, I placed them inconspicuously behind the building where Tim always rested. It was a small gesture full of hope, in the hope that they would ease the burden I was carrying a little. I longed for him to find them and for them to somehow bring him comfort. Each week, I tucked little notes of encouragement into the cupcake wrappers. Week after week, the cupcakes always arrived complete along with the message, It was a quiet routine, a little ritual that became our shared secret. It may not have completely resolved his inner struggles, but it was a deep and meaningful connection. Although Tim never mentioned them, I hoped these words would cheer him up, if only for a moment. One Friday, something else happened. With a sincere thank you, he said, for all you do. His words of gratitude touched my soul, and my eyes filled with tears as I took the note he handed me. It was their way of bridging the gap, preserving their dignity, and reminding us that our work is important. Tim came by, raised his gloved hand in greeting, and held out a letter to us. That gesture meant so much to me. Lily watched him in silence as he enjoyed his latest cupcake creation. "You're a friend," she said with the confidence and innocence that only her smile could convey. Her words, simple but full of purity, said it all. With her warmth, Lily showed him that he was not alone, that their bond was real, a bond forged in kindness and sincerity. Without hesitation, she reached over and wrapped her small arms around him. Friends help friends eat happily. Tim let out a soft laugh, a deep raspy sound that seemed to come from deep within him. In that moment, I understood the true nature of what was happening. Lily wasn't just handing out desserts, she was giving Tim back his dignity, one cupcake at a time. It wasn't just a sweet, it was a connection that changed both of their lives. Gratitude shone in his eyes, which shone a little brighter with every laugh we shared. From that moment on, I realized that Lily's kindness was the reason Tim came back every week. Whether it was raining or the sun was shining, she was always there waiting for him with a delicious surprise, carefully wrapped in baking paper. Despite life's ups and downs, I never stopped. It was her silent act of love, delicately wrapped in icing. I kept baking and made sure there was always something special for him, no matter the circumstances. On a particularly rainy morning, Tim didn't come in his usual garbage truck. His face reflected tiredness, but also a determination to keep his word. Seeing him in this state touched me deeply, as I knew his journey was fraught with challenges we could hardly imagine. Instead, he came on foot, completely soaked, clutching a trash pole as if it were his only support. Despite the rain, a smile spread across Tim's face as he saw Lily waiting for him with obvious excitement. His determination and dedication mirrored hers, and that small gesture said a lot about what they shared. Week after week, they had each other, creating simple but meaningful moments that made the world seem a little warmer. "I haven't forgotten," he said cheerfully, pulling out a carefully foil-wrapped and protected cupcake. Tim's hands were shaking more than usual as he took the muffin, and I watched anxiously as his body trembled under his soaked clothes. Without hesitation, I offered to let him in and pointed out the warmth in our house. It was an instinctive decision, driven by a desire to help and comfort her, if only for a moment. Tim hesitated for a moment, perhaps out of uncertainty or simply because he wasn't used to experiencing so much kindness. But then Lily gently took his hand and whispered, "Don't worry, you're part of our house now." Her calm confidence and unconditional acceptance dispelled any doubts and made it clear that the pure love of a child can sometimes open doors that adults could never have imagined. In our cozy kitchen, Tim sat with a cup of cocoa in his hand, more relaxed than ever. For the first time, the worry lines around Tim's mouth softened and his expression reflected genuine relaxation. In that moment, surrounded by acceptance and calm, he seemed truly at peace, if only for a brief moment. Lily was talking animatedly, her laughter mingling with the soft crackling of the fire and filling the room with warmth. In a moment of reflection, Tim confessed, "I thought he didn't care." It was a simple but powerful truth. It was a simple but powerful truth that he needed to hear. I was sure of it because I could see how much his presence meant to Lily and how his kindness brightened her days. His gaze remained fixed on an indeterminate point, lost in thought. Gently, I replied, "He cares about you, and that's why it matters." Since that rainy day, Tim decided to stop hiding. Over time, he began to help with small tasks and unexpected repairs, earning the appreciation of the neighborhood. The community welcomed him warmly and recognized how important his presence was to our little family. And so, with a muffin and the open heart of a child, a new beginning was born for Tim, full of hope and connection. This moment marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life and brought him closer to the community. As the weeks went by, Tim's presence was noticed by neighbors. Lily's muffins were no longer the only treats he could get his hands on. Every Friday morning she handed him one of her muffins, while we carefully poured him a hot coffee, which not only warmed his hands, but also filled the moment with warmth and meaning. Some offered him food, blankets, or gloves against the cold. Gradually, more and more people came forward who were willing to help him. Every Friday, Tim's smile shone a little brighter, even if he didn't think anyone noticed. It was neatly folded as if it were a secretly guarded treasure. Then I realized that Tim had rested there from time to time. I also understood how much the sleeping bag meant to him and the feeling of protection and security it gave him. One day, while tidying the garden, I discovered a worn sleeping bag carefully hidden behind the garage. Next to the sleeping bag, I found a crumpled piece of paper, a drawing of Lily. Underneath, in Tim's careful handwriting, was written, "The best lunch of my life." These words touched me deeply and reminded me that sometimes the simplest gestures can have a big meaning. It showed Orr and Tim smiling, depicted as stick figures surrounded by muffins and bright sunshine. I never realized how much Lily understood. Her generosity, as innocent as it was genuine, was her way of sharing lunch with him. These little pieces of cake were not just sweets, they were gestures of compassion that came from the depths of her heart. Somehow she knew that Tim had nothing to eat and didn't know where to stay. No one told her, but she sensed it, and week after week she offered him muffins. I always wondered where Lily's great empathy came from. Her simple kindness filled spaces once dominated by silence, transforming them into a warmth that satisfied Tim's invisible hunger. In time, I realized that the wisdom of her actions went far beyond her young age and left a deep mark on everyone around her. No one had taught Orr this level of understanding. It seemed innate, an almost magical intuition that children sometimes possess. Together with our neighbors, we set about making a change. Together, we fixed up a caravan nearby, and finally Tim had a home. It was no longer just a piece of land behind someone else's garage. It was a new beginning made possible by a simple act of kindness. First, we found him temporary accommodation and then helped him to find a job with regular working hours. Although life took new paths, the cupcake tradition remained. Tim smiled proudly every time Lily offered him her delicious treats. "Food always tastes better when it's made with love," he once said to her, with a sincerity that touched the soul. Their bond grew stronger over time, not just because of the cupcakes, but also because of the mutual understanding and shared warmth that blew between them like a gentle, steady breeze. Rain, shine, or snow, every Friday she waited for Tim, and he always came and greeted Orr with his usual hello, sunshine, in a voice that grew softer and softer as time went on. This playful nickname eventually stuck, and Tim's steps became more consistent, bringing with them a spring that cheered us all up. Even on the grayest of days, Lily stood on the porch with a muffin in her hand, true to her ritual of waiting for Tim every Friday, rain, shine, or snow. They often sat together, shared icing-covered snacks, and laughed lightheartedly. What began as a simple exchange of cupcakes developed into a deep and genuine friendship. As I watched them, I realized that my daughter had taught me more than any book. She showed me that love and kindness are living, breathing forces made up of small, sweet moments that can change lives and make the world a little better. She understood that Tim not only needed food, but also a human connection. At one point, Tim murmured in a low voice, "She's the reason I keep trying." These simple yet meaningful words touched me with unparalleled power and reminded me that kindness has the power to affect real change. The most valuable lesson Lily taught me was her understanding of hunger, not just as a physical need, but as a longing for connection that she satisfied with love. It's as if their souls meet in a shared silence in this simple gesture. As I watched the two of them, I realized how much value these small moments hold not only for Lily, but for Tim as well. Their connection is deeply comforting, a relationship where words are superfluous because they seem to understand each other with their hearts. Every week Lily takes Tim by the hand, and together they walk to the garbage truck. I found out that Tim was a homeless man who slept behind the building every night. It made my heart shudder how much he appreciated Lily's small gesture of kindness. Considering the difficulties he faced on a daily basis, Lily's simple acts of kindness became something big in his life. For him, the cupcakes weren't just candy, they were his only constant source of food. Lily felt the hunger not only in Tim's eyes, but also in his heart. With her small hands, she gave him a sense of dignity without falling into pity, perhaps without realizing the implications of her gesture. Her empathy, though simple, had a touching depth. Her innocent kindness acted like a balm on the burden of tiredness that was now reflected in Tim's features. I had never understood the depth with which he perceived the world. Lily's innate empathy, her ability to understand and respond with genuine sensitivity, taught me more than I ever imagined about kindness and its power to change lives even through the smallest gestures. He was not only friendly, he also radiated hope. In her innocence, she recognized a need and fulfilled it without hesitation. The cupcake was not just a dessert, but a gesture of silent understanding. With this small gift, she fed someone who had nothing left. It was as if she somehow understood the challenges Tim faced every day and wanted to help him without it seeming like an act of charity. Her simple gesture transformed a humble cupcake into a powerful symbol of shared hope. In turn, Tim found a reason to get up every day. According to neighbors, his house now stands where his shelter once stood, marking a new beginning for someone who has lived in the shadows for too long. The simple joy of seeing Lily week after week slowly laid the foundation for a more fulfilling life. Thanks to the gesture of a little girl offering sugar and unconditional love, a grown man broke his silence. Lily not only gave him food, but also hope and companionship. It's amazing how such a simple act by one little girl can make such a profound change and create a ripple effect that has transformed our entire neighborhood. With warmth and sincerity, Tim discovered new beginnings, guided by his own kindness. The quiet alleyway, once characterized by loneliness, became a home full of love and life. It was no longer just a place to rest, but a sense of belonging, a deep connection as part of our cozy little community circle. Neighbors continued to support him and recognized the profound impact of true compassion. Seeing Tim's life improve became a source of inspiration for other community members, motivating them to be more mindful and generous. This example made it clear that small acts of kindness have the power to change lives in meaningful and lasting ways. What began as a humble gesture became the seed for a thriving garden of goodwill. Lily continued to impart lessons in kindness and empathy, leaving an indelible impression on the hearts of our neighborhood. Her small acts taught me that even the smallest person has the power to change the world. Every Friday, new stories were born on our front porch centered around a simple muffin.